In this video, we're going to cover the basics of what the pen tool is and what you can create with it. If we switch to the pen tool in our tools panel, make sure you have no fill and you have a stroke. I have a blue stroke that's a 4-point weight so we can really see it. And notice that underneath the pen tool, you also have an add anchor point, delete anchor point, and the actual anchor point tool. So we'll talk about those in just a second. The pen tool can get a little bit frustrating when you're first starting Illustrator because it's not something that we're used to. We're used to kind of freeform drawing on a notepad, for instance. But what the pen tool does is it does a really good job of creating perfect mathematical vector lines that are either straight or curved, and those curves are called Bezier curves. So let's see how we work this. If we want to create something straight, we use the pen tool and we click and we create one anchor. Then as we move down, notice that I have a red line that's following me, or yours might be a different color. If you're in Creative Cloud or Creative Cloud 2014 or any version after that, you should be able to see these guides that are going to give you a preview of what your line's going to look like. If you're in an earlier version like CS6, you won't see this. It will still create the same line, but it doesn't give you a preview. So if I were you, I would definitely switch to Creative Cloud or Creative Cloud 2014 because it's a lot easier to work with the pen tool. So as we move down, we can click and create another anchor point, and it's going to draw a straight line between those two anchor points. So I can then come over here and click, 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 and keep going, and then move back to the very first anchor point I created, and you'll notice the pen tool has a little circle to the bottom right of it. That means that it's going to close this shape. So if I click it, this is now a closed shape. So I can grab my selection tool and I can do anything I want to the shape. I can fill it with a color. I can change the stroke color if I want to, make it thicker, thinner, whatever I need to do. So this allowed me to create a custom shape without having to do the Pathfinder or all kinds of fancy footwork. But where it really excels is being able to create curved lines. Now this is not always as easy, but once you get the hang of it, you can really do amazing things in Adobe Illustrator. So let's switch to the pen tool, and we'll go ahead and change it to no fill, and we'll go back to our 4-point blue stroke. And instead of just clicking, I'm going to click and drag. And notice when I do, it doesn't really show me my line that I'm creating. It shows me two handles that move in opposite directions of each other. But what these are handles that are going to create the Bezier curves. And right now, because my mouse is moving down, even though there's a handle that's moving up, I'm indicating to Illustrator that I want this curve to move down. The other handle would control a curve that came before this anchor point, but since this is my very first anchor point, it's not really going to control anything. So if I let go, it doesn't really seem like anything happened, and here we have our preview line again. So if I click here and drag up, you'll notice that I'm creating a perfect curve. So then if I were to say come over here and drag out, notice that as I drag it and stretch it, the more drastic I stretch it out, the more dramatic the angle is. And again, I can turn it to create whichever direction this curve is going in. So I can stretch that out as far as I need it to go. And then again, I can come in here and just click and drag and create whatever illustration I want to create. And again, if I move back to that original anchor point and click and drag, see how it just changed that original curve? But this is allowing me to create mathematically created vector lines using Bezier curves. Now this shape isn't anything, and it doesn't even look that good, but it is practicing that idea of creating the curves by stretching the handles out. But what happens if you did want it to look like something and for some reason you just didn't do a good job? Well, this is where we can do a couple of things. We can change the pen tool, but underneath it we have the add anchor point or delete. So let's say I wanted to come in and delete this particular anchor point. I can click it and it's going to delete, and now it's going to go from this anchor point to this one. I can also come in here and add an anchor point. So let's say I wanted to add an anchor point here. And I can also convert an anchor point from a curve to a corner. So if I were to click this anchor point, notice right now it has two curves attached to it. If I click, all of a sudden it's going to come to a sharp point because these no longer have handles and therefore it's not a curve, it's a corner. Then I can grab my direct selection tool and click on any anchor and edit them as I see fit. So I can pull them out, I can make the angles more dramatic, pull this one out, turn it, whatever I need to do to create my actual illustration. So that's always something you can do. You can start with the pen tool, try to draw an object, at least a recognizable object, and if it doesn't work out, don't worry, because you can always come back to the direct selection tool and you can actually edit it after the fact. Now, we also have a video in here called Being More Efficient with the Pen Tool, and that's where you actually change these options on the fly. You can convert from a curve to a corner point on the fly, or you can change direction of your curves as you're actually drawing them. So make sure you watch that video so that you can become more proficient and efficient with the pen tool in Illustrator.